Meditations, a modern reading of Marcus Aurelius, the timeless Stoic guide to discipline, resilience, inner peace, and mental toughness. Ancient Roman Philosophy for Modern Men and Leaders by Aurelian Hart. Introduction. In the year 170 AD, the air along the Danube River was so cold it felt like a knife against the skin. A man sat in a dark, drafty tent, huddled over a small table. His name was Marcus Aurelius. He was the Emperor of Rome, the most powerful human being on the planet. By a simple wave of his hand, he could have anyone executed. With one word, he could move entire armies across continents. He had more gold, more land, and more power than anyone else alive. But Marcus did not feel powerful. He felt tired. His bones ached from years of living in muddy military camps. His stomach was often cramped with pain, and he had trouble sleeping. He was a man who loved books and quiet study, yet he spent his days surrounded by the screams of war and the smell of death. He was a man of peace who had spent the last decade fighting a brutal war against Germanic tribes that seemed to never end. Worse than the war outside was the chaos inside his own city. A terrible plague was sweeping through Rome, killing thousands of people every single day. His trusted friends were dying. Even his own family members were being taken by the sickness. One of his top generals had recently turned against him, trying to steal his throne. Marcus had every reason to be angry. He had every reason to give up, to hide under his covers, or to lash out at the world in rage. Instead, he picked up a pen. He didn't write a book for the public. He didn't write a speech to impress the Senate. He wrote a journal to himself. He wrote it to keep his mind from breaking. He wrote it to remind himself how to be a good man when everything around him was falling apart. He called these notes to himself, though today we know them as meditations. He was a reluctant leader. He never asked for the crown. He was a quiet student of philosophy who was shoved onto the world stage during its darkest hour. He was just a human being trying to do his duty without losing his soul. He didn't know that 1800 years later, people would still be reading his private thoughts to find the strength to get through their own days. Most of us will never lead an empire. We will never stand on a battlefield in the freezing mud waiting for a barbarian army to charge. But the world we live in today feels just as loud and just as heavy as the one Marcus faced. We live in a world of red alerts. Our phones buzz in our pockets every few minutes, demanding our attention. We see headlines about wars, diseases, and money problems before we even get out of bed. We feel a constant pressure to do more, earn more, and be more. We are tired, not from physical labor, but from the weight of always being on. You might know the feeling of lying awake at 2 a.m., your mind spinning in circles. You worry about a mistake you made at work. You worry about what someone said to you in a meeting, or what they might say tomorrow. This is the modern soul in crisis. We have all the technology in the world, yet we are more anxious than ever. We are reactive. We are like dry leaves in the wind, blown around by every email, every news story, and every grumpy person we meet. It feels like we are losing control. We snap at the people we love because we are stressed. We put off the big goals we care about because we are too busy dealing with small fires. We feel like passengers in our own lives, watching the days go by while we just try to survive until Friday. This book is about taking the wheel back. It is about building what Marcus called an inner citadel, a fortress inside your mind that no one can break into. By the time you finish these pages, you will not just be someone who knows about Stoic philosophy. You will be a sovereign leader. This doesn't mean you will rule a country. It means you will rule yourself. You will be the kind of person who stays calm when everyone else is panicking. You will be the person who knows exactly what matters and has the courage to ignore everything else. You will learn how to look at a disaster and see it as it really is, without the scary labels your mind tries to add. You will learn the secret of the dichotomy of control, which is the only real way to stop feeling anxious. You will find out how to get the most important work of your life done, even when you don't feel like getting out of bed. The wisdom in this book is not a life hack or a trendy trick. It is a war manual for the mind that has been tested for 2,000 years. It has been used by emperors in their palaces, and by prisoners in their cells. It works because it is based on the truth of how the human mind functions. To see how this works in the real world, we need to look at someone who is living through the noise right now. The man in the glass office. Elias Thorne sat in his office on the 34th floor of a glass tower in Chicago. Outside, the sun was setting over the river, but Elias didn't notice the view. He was staring at 3 different computer monitors. One showed a map of the world, with tiny red dots representing delayed shipping containers. Another showed a stack of unread emails that seemed to grow every time he blinked. The third was a chat window where his boss was asking for a report that was already 2 hours late. Elias was 42 years old. He was the vice president of logistics for a massive global firm. On paper, he was a huge success. He had a beautiful home in the suburbs, a wife named Sarah, and 2 kids, Leo and Mia. He drove a nice car and made a lot of money. But inside, Elias felt like he was drowning. His chest always felt tight, like there was a heavy weight sitting on his lungs. He drank 4 cups of coffee before noon just to keep his brain moving, and then he needed a glass of scotch at night just to shut it off. He was a perfectionist who believed that if he worried enough about every possible disaster, he could somehow stop them from happening. He called this being responsible. His doctor called it high blood pressure. That Tuesday night, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah. "Are you coming home for dinner? Leo has his science project tonight." Elias felt a surge of hot anger. Doesn't she understand how much pressure I'm under? He thought. I'm doing this for them. He typed back a short, cold message. Stuck at the office. Don't wait up. As soon as he hit send, he felt a wave of guilt. He looked at a photo on his desk of Leo and Mia laughing at the beach. He realized he couldn't remember the last time he had actually played with them without checking his phone. He was physically there, but his mind was always 1,000 miles away, worrying about a port strike in Asia or a fuel price hike in Europe. He was a fragmented man. His attention was pulled in a dozen directions at once. He was reactive. If a client was happy, Elias was happy. If a shipment was late, Elias was miserable. His peace of mind was a hostage held by things he couldn't even control. Elias stood up and walked to the window. He saw his own reflection in the glass. He looked older than 42. He looked gray. He realized that if he kept living this way, he was going to have a heart attack before he saw his kids graduate from high school. He was successful in his career, but he was failing as a man. He had no anchor. He turned back to his desk to grab his briefcase. As he moved his laptop, he saw a small, dusty book that had been tucked under a stack of folders for months. It was a copy of Meditations by Marcus Aurelius. It had belonged to his father, who had passed away 2 years ago. His father had been a high school history teacher, a man who never made much money, but always seemed to have a deep, quiet peace about him. Elias opened the book to a random page. A sentence was underlined in thick blue ink. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Elias read it again. Then he sat down in his leather chair and read it a 3rd time. For the first time in years, he took a deep breath. He didn't know how to do it yet, but he knew he couldn't keep living the way he was. He was tired of being a passenger. He was ready to learn how to be the master of his own mind. The path ahead. The journey Elias is about to take, and the journey you are starting right now, is divided into 3 parts. First, we will learn how to see. Most of our suffering doesn't come from what happens to us, but from the stories we tell ourselves about what happens. We will look at how Marcus Aurelius stripped away the glitter of the world to see the bare truth. We will learn how to remove the adjectives from our lives. Instead of saying, "This is a terrible mistake," we learn to say, "I made a mistake." This small shift is the beginning of freedom. Next, we will learn how to act. Stoicism is not about sitting on a mountain and thinking deep thoughts. It is a philosophy of action. We will explore the 4 pillars of character: wisdom, justice, courage, and temperance. These are not just nice ideas, they are tools for making decisions. When you have a clear set of values, you never have to agonize over a choice again. You simply ask what the virtuous path is, and you walk it. Finally, we will learn how to endure. Life will always bring winters. There will be seasons of grief, failure, and physical pain. We will look at the lives of men like Admiral James Stockdale, who survived 7 years in a prisoner of war camp by using the lessons of the Stoics. We will see how to use the view from above to make our biggest problems look like tiny grains of sand. Throughout this book, we will return to Marcus Aurelius in his tent by the river. We will walk with Cato the Younger as he stands up to a dictator. We will listen to the tap code of prisoners who refuse to let their spirits be broken. And we will follow Elias Thorne as he tries to bring these ancient secrets into the high-speed world of modern business and family life. We will see him face board meetings, flight cancellations, and personal loss. We will see if a man in a glass tower can find the same inner citadel that an emperor found in the mud. It is a set of keys. Each chapter will give you a new key to unlock a different part of your own strength. You do not need to be a philosopher to read this. You do not need to have a degree or a lot of free time. You only need to be someone who is tired of being pushed around by the world. You only need to be someone who wants to stand upright on your own 2 feet, no matter how hard the wind blows. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that we should stop arguing about what a good man should be, and just be one. The tent is cold. The candle is flickering. The pen is in your hand. Chapter 1. Mastering the Art of Objective Perception. If you stand in the center of the Roman Forum today, you will see a field of broken stone. There are tall marble pillars that lead to nowhere. There are patches of grass growing through cracks where the most powerful men in history once decided the fate of the world. It is quiet now. Tourists carry cameras and water bottles, snapping photos of the dirt. The air smells like sun-baked brick and old city streets. It is hard to believe that this place was once the loud, beating heart of an empire that stretched from the rainy woods of England to the hot sands of Egypt. In the year 175 AD, this place was anything but quiet. It was a sensory overload. The sun bounced off polished white stone so brightly it hurt your eyes. The air was thick with the smell of roasting meat from temple sacrifices, expensive incense, and the sweat of thousands of people packed into the streets. Chariots rattled over the cobblestones like thunder. In the middle of it all sat one man. He was middle-aged, often sick, and carried the weight of the entire world on his shoulders. This was Marcus Aurelius. He was the emperor of Rome. This meant that whatever he said became law. If he wanted someone dead, they died. If he wanted a palace built, it appeared. People treated him like a living god. They bowed until their foreheads touched the dirt. They wore their best clothes just to be near him. They called him Caesar, with a tone of voice that suggested he wasn't even human. Most people in his position lost their minds. Before him, there were emperors who used their power to do terrible things just because they could. They spent all the city's money on parties. They thought they were special because everyone told them they were. But Marcus had a secret weapon. He had a way of looking at the world that stripped away all the fake layers. He didn't see a god when he looked in the mirror. He saw a man made of bone and blood who would one day turn back into dust. This way of seeing things is what saved his sanity, and it is the first tool you need to build your own inner strength. The purple robe and the shellfish. To understand how Marcus stayed so calm, you have to look at his clothes. As the emperor, he wore a specific kind of cloak. It was dyed a deep, rich purple. In those days, purple was the color of ultimate power. It was the Ferrari of the ancient world. Only the highest-ranking people could wear it. To a normal Roman citizen, that purple robe represented glory, fear, and majesty. If you saw the purple cloak coming down the street, you stepped aside. You felt a knot of awe in your stomach. Marcus knew this. He also knew that if he started believing the robe made him special, he was in trouble. He knew that the moment you let an object or a title define you, you become a slave to it. So he practiced a mental exercise. When he put on that famous purple cloak, he didn't tell himself, "I am wearing the symbol of my greatness." Instead, he looked at the fabric and told himself the truth. He whispered to himself that this robe was just wool from a sheep. It had been dipped in the blood of a specific kind of shellfish called a murex. That's all it was. Sheep hair and snail guts. Think about how powerful that is. He took the most impressive thing in the world and turned it into something basic, even a little gross. He did the same thing with the fancy food at his table. When the servants brought out a roasted pig or a plate of expensive fish, he didn't call it a feast. He told himself it was just a dead animal. When he drank the finest wine in the empire, he told himself it was just old, fermented grape juice. He wasn't trying to be a downer or a boring person. He was trying to see the world without the gloss. We spend most of our lives reacting to the gloss. We see a fancy car and feel jealous. We get a mean email and feel angry. We face a scary deadline and feel panicked. Marcus realized that the words fancy, mean, and scary aren't real. They are just stickers we put on top of the facts. If you peel the stickers off, the facts can't hurt you as much. The objective lens. This technique is called objective perception. It is the act of seeing things exactly as they are without adding your own drama to the story. Imagine you are holding a camera. When you take a photo of a tree, the camera doesn't care if the tree is beautiful or ugly. It doesn't care if the tree reminds you of a sad day from your childhood. The camera just records the brown of the bark and the green of the leaves. It records the facts. Most of us don't live like cameras. We live like movie directors. We take a simple event and turn it into a giant drama with music and villains. This is where our stress comes from. It isn't the event itself that makes us miserable. It is the story we tell ourselves about the event. Think about a common modern problem. You are at work, and your boss sends you a short message. "We need to talk. Come to my office at 4. If you are like most people, your brain immediately starts writing a script. You think, "Oh no, I'm getting fired. He looked at me weird this morning. This is a disaster. How will I pay my mortgage? My career is over." By the time 4 o'clock rolls around, your heart is racing, your palms are sweaty, and you are a nervous wreck. Now, let's use the objective lens. What are the facts? 1. A person sent a message. 2. The message contains 10 words. 3. There is a meeting at 4 o'clock. That's it. Anything else you add, the fear, the disaster, the firing, is a story you are making up. You are dipping the wool in the shellfish blood and calling it glory. You are taking a simple 10-word sentence and calling it a catastrophe. Objective perception is the art of stopping the story before it starts. A view from the 34th floor. Elias Thorne sat in his office on the 34th floor of a glass building in Chicago. Outside, the Chicago River looked like a dark, moving ribbon cutting through the gray city. It was 6:30 p.m. on a Tuesday. The cleaning crew was already working on the other side of the floor. The only light in his office came from 3 large computer monitors. Elias was the vice president of logistics for a global shipping firm. On his screens, there were several rows of bright red text. Each red line represented a massive shipping delay. A storm in the Atlantic had pushed back a dozen container ships. A labor strike in a European port had halted another 20. Those red lines weren't just data, they were fire. He felt the heat in his chest. He felt a sharp stabbing pain behind his eyes. He had been staring at these screens for 4 hours, and in his mind, he was already watching his life fall apart. He imagined the angry phone calls from the CEO. He imagined the clients screaming. He thought about his wife, Sarah, and the kids. He had promised to be home for dinner, but he was here, drowning in disaster. His phone buzzed. It was a text from his assistant, Mark, about a typo in a report Elias had sent out earlier. Elias snapped. He typed back a furious message calling the mistake unacceptable and lazy. He hit send and then slumped back in his chair, his heart thumping against his ribs. In that moment, Elias was the opposite of Marcus Aurelius. He wasn't seeing sheep's wool and snail blood. He was seeing ruin and failure. He was letting the red lines on a screen dictate whether he was a happy man or a miserable one. He was a fragmented man. He was scattered across 1,000 different worries, most of which hadn't even happened yet. He reached into his desk drawer for some aspirin, and his hand brushed against a small leather-bound book. It was an old copy of Meditations that his father had given him years ago. He hadn't looked at it in a decade. He opened it to a random page and read a single sentence. Everything's value is in the way you look at it. Elias looked back at the red lines. He tried to do what the book said. He tried to look at them differently. The ships are late, he thought. That is a fact. The storm happened. That is a fact. I am sitting in a chair in Chicago. That is also a fact. He realized that the disaster wasn't on the screen. The disaster was in his head. The red lines weren't bad. They were just information. The information told him he had work to do. It didn't tell him he was a failure. It didn't tell him his life was over. He took a deep breath. For the first time in weeks, the knot in his stomach loosened just a little bit. How to build the framework. Objective perception is like a muscle. You aren't born with it, and it doesn't stay strong unless you use it every day. When you feel that surge of anxiety or anger, you have to stop and strip the robe. You can use a simple 3-step process to do this. Label the raw event. Describe what is happening using only words a 5-year-old would understand. Don't use words like unfair, terrible, or stupid. Instead of, my car broke down and ruined my day, say the engine stopped moving. Instead of my partner is being a jerk, say my partner said words I didn't expect. Remove the adjectives. Adjectives are the dye on the wool. They provide the color, but they aren't the fabric. If you find yourself using words that describe how something is, delete them. This is a horrible mistake. This is a mistake. He is a mean boss. He is a boss. State the duty once you have the bare facts. Ask yourself what the next logical step is. Facts don't require feelings. They require actions. The engine stopped moving. I will call a tow truck. There is a mistake in the report. I will type the correct numbers. When you do this, you are building what the Stoics called the inner citadel. A citadel is a fortress inside a city. Even if the city walls are broken, even if the enemy is in the streets, the people can retreat to the citadel and be safe. Your mind is that fortress. If you can see the world objectively, the enemy, which is your own runaway emotion, cannot get inside. Marcus Aurelius lived in a world of constant noise. He was surrounded by people who wanted things from him, people who lied to him, and enemies who wanted to kill him. If he had let every insult or problem into his heart, he would have collapsed. Instead, he kept his perception clean. He looked at a traitor and thought, this is a person who does not understand what is good for them. He didn't think, this is a monster who has betrayed my honor. By keeping his description simple, he kept his mind calm. The reason this is so hard for us is that we are taught to love the legend. We want our lives to feel like a big deal. We want our successes to feel glorious and our struggles to feel epic. But the problem with the legend is that it is heavy. If you believe your success is glory, you will be terrified of losing it. If you believe your struggle is a tragedy, you will spend all your time crying instead of fixing the problem. Marcus saw this even in the way Romans treated death. When a great man died, there would be a massive funeral. People would wail and scream. They would build huge monuments. Marcus looked at this and realized it was just more shellfish blood. He would remind himself that the great men of the past, the heroes, the singers, the kings, were all gone. Their names were just sounds now. The glory didn't save them from the grave. This realization wasn't meant to make him sad. It was meant to make him free. If fame is just a clatter of tongues, then you don't have to worry about what people say about you. If a fancy house is just stones and mortar, then you don't have to worry about losing it. You can see this in how we handle our digital lives today. We look at social media and see people living perfect lives. We see the luxury and the adventure. But if we use Marcus's lens, we see something else. We see light hitting a glass screen. We see pixels arranged in a certain pattern. We see a person holding a plastic device, trying very hard to look happy for a camera. When you strip away the legend of the influencer, the envy disappears. You are just looking at a stranger in a photo. The practice of deconstruction. To get good at this, you have to practice on the small stuff. Marcus didn't just use this for the purple robe. He used it for everything. He would look at his own hand and see flesh and bone. He would listen to music and break it down into individual notes and the silence between them. You can do this right now. Look at the device you are using to read this. You might think of it as your lifeline or your connection to the world. But if you deconstruct it, it is just a sandwich of glass, metal, and plastic. It is a bunch of tiny wires and a battery that will eventually stop working. It has no power to make you happy or sad unless you give it that power. Think about a person who bothers you. Maybe it's a neighbor who plays loud music or a coworker who talks over you. In your head, they are the annoyance. They are a villain in your daily story. Now, use the objective lens. They are a human being. They are moving their vocal cords to create sound. They are vibrating the air. That's all they are doing. The annoyance is something you are adding. You are taking the vibrating air and dyeing it purple. If you stop dyeing it, it's just air. And you can ask them to stop, but you don't have to be upset about it. Your peace of mind is too valuable to trade for a few sound waves. Returning to the commander Marcus Aurelius. He died in a cold, muddy military camp in what is now Austria. He wasn't in his palace. He wasn't surrounded by luxury. He was sick, he was far from home, and he knew the end was coming. His friends stood around his bed weeping. They were looking at the tragedy of a dying emperor. But Marcus wasn't looking at a tragedy. He looked at his friends and asked, "Why are you weeping for me? You should be thinking about the plague and the reality of death that faces us all." Even at the very end, he was stripping away the drama. He wasn't a dying god. He was a man finishing his work. He saw his death as a natural process, no different than a leaf falling from a tree or a grape turning into a raisin. He didn't need the purple robe anymore. He had something better. He had a mind that was upright, not kept upright. He didn't need the world to be a certain way for him to be okay. He didn't need the sun to shine or the crowds to cheer. He had built his inner citadel out of the truth. As you go through your day, remember the shellfish. When you feel yourself getting worked up, when the Sunday scaries hit, or when an email makes your blood boil, take a second to look for the wool. Ask yourself, what is this thing without the name I've given it? If you can strip away the adjectives, you will find a strange kind of quiet. The world doesn't get less busy, but you get more still. You stop being a fragmented man who is pulled in every direction by your opinions. You start to become a sovereign leader. You are the one in charge of what things mean. The red lines on the screen stay red, but they lose their fire. The purple robe stays purple, but it's just a piece of clothing. You are finally seeing the world for what it is, and that is the only way to truly be free. Chapter 2. Who is really in charge of your mind? I am leaving the world of technology and entering the world of Epictetus. James Stockdale whispered these words to himself as his A4E Skyhawk jet spiraled toward the jungle floor. It was September 9th, 1965. A few seconds earlier, he had been a powerful U.S. Navy commander flying over North Vietnam. He had buttons, dials, and a massive engine at his command. He was the master of $1 million machine. Then a loud bang from anti-aircraft fire changed everything. His engine died. His control stick went limp. Smoke filled the cockpit. As he pulled the handle to eject from the plane, he knew his life as he knew it was over. He was about to spend years as a prisoner of war. He would be beaten. He would be starved. He would be locked in a tiny, dark cell. But as his parachute opened in the quiet air, he didn't panic about the things he was losing. He didn't cry out about the unfairness of the war or the failure of his jet. Instead, he focused on a book he had read years ago in school. That book was written by an ancient Stoic teacher named Epictetus. Epictetus had been a slave in Rome nearly 2,000 years before Stockdale was born. He knew what it was like to have no power over his own body. He knew what it was like to be owned by someone else. He taught that a man's true power does not come from his tools, his money, or his rank. It comes from his mind. Stockdale landed in a small village. A crowd of angry people was waiting for him. They broke his leg and dragged him toward a prison that would become known as the Hanoi Hilton. Most men would have felt like they had lost everything. But Stockdale felt a strange sense of calm. He realized that while the guards could take his plane, his uniform, and even his health, they could not take his ability to choose how he felt about it. He was entering a world where only one thing mattered, what was actually in his control. The great lie of the modern world. We are often told a lie from the moment we wake up. The lie is that we are in charge of everything around us. We think that if we work hard enough, we can control how our boss treats us. We think that if we plan well enough, we can control the traffic on the way to a meeting. We think that if we are good people, we can control whether others like us or whether the weather ruins our weekend plans. When these things don't go our way, we feel